In everyone's life, there comes a moment to contemplate the future, considering where and how to spend their golden years. Often, this decision leads to moving into a nursing home. However, before taking this step, it's essential to carefully weigh the pros and cons, as life there may not be as rosy as it seems. One of the biggest disappointments people face after moving into a nursing home is the loss of independence. Before the move, everyone had their own way of life, habits, and preferences. They decided when to wake up, what to eat, and how to spend their day. They could go for a walk at any moment, cook a favorite meal, or simply sit quietly with a book. But in a nursing home, everything changes. Time is no longer your own. Everything is subject to a schedule set by others. Breakfast is served at a specific time, regardless of whether you're hungry or not. Bedtime is also scheduled, even if you don't feel like sleeping. Even simple decisions, such as choosing food or clothing, become privileges rather than basic needs. You start to feel deprived of control over your own life. Imagine waking up in an unfamiliar bed, in a room without your favorite things, those little details that created comfort and reminded you of home. Instead, there are sterile walls and the feeling that you no longer control your life. The hardest part is realizing that once you give up your independence, it's almost impossible to get it back. You have to adapt to the new conditions, stop arguing and asking questions. You learn to fit into the system, but gradually lose yourself in the process. Are you ready to give up those small freedoms that make your life unique? Because when they disappear, you'll miss them more than you ever imagined. The second bitter disappointment is the feeling of being forgotten, as if you've been erased from life. The harsh truth about moving into a nursing home is realizing that the world outside its walls continues to live its life, unaware of your absence. Initially, when you first cross the threshold of this institution, relatives solemnly promise frequent visits. You believe them, and at first, it happens. Your daughter visits once a week, and your grandchildren delight you with their presence on weekends. It seems that the connection with your former life is still strong. However, months relentlessly pass, and visits become increasingly rare. Your daughter prefers a phone call to personal interaction, and your grandchildren are absorbed in their studies and work. Holidays are especially painful. Everyone promises to come, but at the last moment plans fall apart, and you're left alone in the common room, watching other residents hopefully look at the door, expecting to be remembered today. It's not about the fading love of your loved ones, but about the relentless flow of life that makes its adjustments. When someone is absent from everyday life, it's easy to fall into the illusion that they're fine, that they've adapted and don't need the same attention. But the harsh reality is that the longer you stay in a nursing home, the easier it is for those around you to forget how much you still need their support. One evening, sitting in your room with the phone in your hand, a painful dilemma arises. Should you call your son? You don't want to be a burden, obtrusively reminding him of your existence, waiting for a visit that may never happen. And so, you put down the phone and realize, this is your fate now, to watch the days go by, hoping that someone will remember you. Therefore, before deciding to move into a nursing home, you should honestly answer the question, are you ready for loneliness? After all, no matter how strong your family's love is, when you disappear from their sight, it becomes easier to forget you. The third heavy regret is the loss of the meaning of life, the feeling of aimless existence. Moving into a nursing home, you only think about changing your place of residence, not realizing that the very reason for waking up in the morning is also changing. At home, there were responsibilities, a daily routine, hobbies, things that filled life with meaning. Even the little things, watering flowers, making morning coffee, keeping your corner tidy, gave you a sense of purpose. But in a nursing home, these familiar rituals disappear. Others cook the food, clean for you, and the plants. They no longer need your care. At first, you convince yourself that it's time for a long-awaited rest, a relief from chores and responsibilities. But after a few weeks, you realize that something is missing. The days drag on endlessly, filled only with waiting. This is also observed in other residents. Once energetic people now sit for days, staring into nothingness, waiting for time to finally take pity and fly by faster. You remember George, an 84-year-old man who worked as a carpenter his whole life. At home, he was constantly making something, building small structures in his garage. But here, there are no tools, no projects, nothing that could be the fruit of his labor. And so he slowly fades away. His hands, once strong and skilled, now lie helplessly in his lap. I feel useless, he confessed one day, and every word resonated in my soul. When there is no one left to care for, nothing to strive for, life loses its value. The mind dulls, the body weakens, and soon you become just another resident of a place where time moves, but nothing changes. Therefore, when considering moving to a nursing home, it is necessary to think about what gives life meaning. After all, after moving, finding a new purpose is not as easy as filling your time. It's a struggle to preserve what makes you feel alive. The fourth bitter regret of the elderly is related to the unexpectedly rapid deterioration of health. The heroes of these stories, before moving to nursing homes, felt quite cheerful and energetic, befitting their age. Of course, they did not participate in marathon races, but they retained the ability to self-care, took walks, and cooked their own food. Each of them had their own established habits that supported their physical activity, regular trips to the store, morning exercises, and even ordinary movements around the house, helping to keep their legs toned. However, after moving to a nursing home, everything changed dramatically. At first, this was perceived as a well-deserved rest and relaxation. Ready-made meals freed them from having to stand at the stove, and to receive any help, all that was needed was to press the call button for staff. But gradually came the realization that the less effort is put into self-care, the faster the body weakens. Movement was minimized, and legs lost their mobility. The prevailing sedentary position turned a simple rise from a chair into a real test. Muscles, supported for years, disappeared with astonishing speed. And this sad fate befell not just one person. A similar picture was observed everywhere. People who arrived at the nursing home on their own 2 feet suddenly began to need wheelchairs. Those who had previously been independent now needed help with the most basic things. Paradoxically, the more help they were given, the more they needed it. The story of a neighbor named Alice comes to mind. An 81-year-old woman who radiated energy and vitality upon arriving at the nursing home. She took daily walks around the grounds, claiming that age was just a number and she wasn't going to slow down. But after a few months, her walks became less frequent. Then a walker appeared, and soon a wheelchair. One day she sadly confessed, "I don't know how it happened, but I feel like I've aged 10 years in just a few months." This was the feeling experienced by many residents of the nursing home. When a person stops using their body, they start to lose it. In the conditions of a nursing home, where everything is created to make life easier, it's easy to forget that movement is not just comfort, but a vital necessity. If only they knew how quickly they would lose their strength, they would have made more effort to maintain activity, even when it seemed unbearably difficult. Therefore, before deciding to move to a nursing home, it is necessary to ask yourself the question, will there be enough motivation to maintain physical fitness when everything around is created to maximize the ease of life? After all, when the process of slowing down is started, returning to the previous activity turns out to be much more difficult than it seems at first glance. The fifth bitter regret is related to the loss of privacy and personal dignity. Before moving to a nursing home, a person rarely thinks about the scale of the loss of personal space. Within the walls of your own home, there is always the opportunity to retire, close the bedroom door, and enjoy the silence, acting at your own discretion. However, in a nursing home, privacy becomes an unattainable luxury. From the first days of stay, there is a feeling of constant observation. Staff constantly come and go, regular room checks are carried out, and common areas are almost never deserted. Even such elementary actions as dressing or visiting the bathroom often require outside help. Despite the awareness that employees are only performing their duties, accepting help in things that have been done independently throughout life is not easy. In the first weeks, the need to ask permission for actions that were once performed without thinking is especially acute. The desire to take a shower may turn into waiting until someone can assist. The need to visit the toilet sometimes leads to the fact that pressing the call button turns into a long wait. Even the choice of meals becomes limited. If the proposed menu doesn't suit one's taste, one has to make do. And let's not forget the issue of roommates. Not everyone gets a private room, and sharing personal space with a stranger, chosen against one's will, can be extremely unpleasant. If you're lucky, your roommate will be friendly, but often you encounter noisy, unclean, or cognitively impaired individuals, making sleep nearly impossible. And no matter how hard you try to make the room feel like home, it will never truly be your own. Dignity is a valuable quality that is easily lost, and only after entering a nursing home do you realize how much you have to sacrifice. When a knock on the door doesn't always precede an expectation of an answer, when communication is conducted from the perspective of a patient rather than a person, when the daily routine is dictated by someone else's schedule, it inevitably changes a person. Gradually, you begin to feel like you are no longer yourself, turning into just another name on a list. Therefore, before deciding to move into a nursing home, you need to honestly ask yourself, are you ready to give up your accustomed privacy and control over your own life? Because once you lose them, it will be very difficult to get them back. The sixth bitter realization is that leaving the walls of a nursing home turns out to be a much more difficult task than initially imagined. When entering such an institution, a person often deludes themselves with the thought that this step is temporary. It seems to them that they are just trying it out, assessing the situation, and if they are dissatisfied, they can always return to their former life. However, once inside, they face unexpected obstacles on the path to returning. At first glance, everything seems simple. If you don't like it, you'll go back home. But the reality is that the house is no longer waiting for them in the same way. The empty dwelling requires constant care, which becomes difficult from a distance. Children, driven by good intentions, begin to make their own adjustments. They sell things that they think are no longer needed, and even consider renting out the house. When the elderly person talks about returning, they respond evasively. Are you sure you can manage alone? Isn't it safer here? We just want what's best. In addition to this, physical decline makes itself known. After several months of living where you don't have to worry about cooking, cleaning, or even long walks, a person loses their former strength. The independence they once possessed begins to slip away, turning the idea of returning home into a complex puzzle. Uncertainty in their own abilities and fear of loneliness restrict their movements. Such stories are not unique. Many people who decide on temporary residence in a nursing home later realize that returning is not so easy. The longer the stay within these walls, the harder it is to adapt to life outside them. Some are completely deprived of such an opportunity when their house is sold and their savings are depleted to pay for care. The path back is cut off. Few people talk about it, but moving into a nursing home, which seems like a reversible decision, becomes a point of no return for many. Gradually, this institution becomes the person's whole world, and life outside its walls, once familiar and habitual, begins to seem like a distant memory. Therefore, when considering the possibility of moving into a nursing home, one should ask themselves, are you ready for the fact that leaving it may not be as easy as it seems? After settling in there, a person faces financial, physical, and emotional barriers that are much more difficult to overcome than they might have imagined. Ultimately, looking back on the years lived, the author does not regret the relentless passage of time, but is tormented by the thought that they once considered a nursing home the only possible outcome. crossing the threshold of this institution with the hope of finding comfort, protection, and a higher standard of living. They faced a reality where they were gradually deprived of independence, privacy, meaning of existence, and even a sense of self-worth. Should we conclude from this that all nursing homes are equally unsuitable for life? Not at all. Some people really need the level of medical care and attention they receive there. However, before making such a responsible decision, you should carefully weigh all the pros and cons, realizing exactly what you have to give up. After all, after the move, life will never be the same. If the author had the opportunity to turn back time, they would have made much more effort to stay within their own walls, would have explored all available ways to get the necessary help without sacrificing their freedom, and would have made sure of the real need for such a drastic step. And if anyone is faced with a similar choice, the author hopes that they will find the strength to ask themselves, is this really the best decision for me? Or is it just what seems easiest at the moment? After all, the life one lives today, their daily routine, their independence, their right to choose, all of this is worth fighting for until the very end.